Welcome to Early Morning Catechism. It is good to be back with you again. I'm Sister Elise, Director of Religious Education for Holy Spirit Parish in Kimberly and Darboy. This week, Sunday, we celebrate the second greatest feast of the church year. Not too long ago, we celebrated the great feast of Easter. Today is the completion of the Easter season, the Feast of Pentecost. It is now 50 days after Easter, and the apostolic community has been in the upper room having a kind of retreat. And today's reading begins with these words. When the time for Pentecost was fulfilled, they were all in one place together. And suddenly there came from the sky a noise like a strong driving wind, and it filled the entire house in which they were. Then there appeared to them tongues as of fire, which parted and came to rest on each one of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in different tongues as the Spirit enabled them to proclaim. I should point out, first of all, that Pentecost was a Jewish feast, celebrated 50 days after Passover. And as we go through our little lesson today, I will show you the comparison between the Old Testament feasts and the New Testament. But first of all, let's talk about what the Holy Spirit really did for the apostles. We often use the expression, they just didn't get it. Well, the apostles didn't get it when it was time for Jesus to be crucified. And as we know, they ran and they hid. After the resurrection, when Jesus appeared to them and talked with them and ate with them, he still had to reprimand them because they weren't sure. He reprimanded them for their lack of belief that this really was the risen Lord standing before them. On Pentecost, they finally got it. What did they get? Well, I think in Peter's Pentecost speech, it all comes together toward the end of his speech in chapter 2, verse 36, where he says, "Therefore let the whole house of Israel know beyond any doubt that God has made both Lord and Messiah, this Jesus whom you crucified." In other words, up until Pentecost, they had had wonderful relationships with Jesus, wonderful experiences with him, but they didn't quite understand his passion and death and even his resurrection until the Holy Spirit came to them. And the Holy Spirit basically filled them with the conviction that this Jesus was more than a prophet or a priest or a moral teacher or a rabbi or a miracle worker. This Jesus was the Son of God, the Messiah that they had been waiting for. This Jesus was the same as the Yahweh to whom they prayed as Jews. Now, let us look at the feasts. In the Old Testament, we go from Passover to Pentecost, which was a celebration of the Mount Sinai covenant. Passover was about what God did. God led the people from slavery to freedom. Pentecost was about Mount Sinai and the entrance of the people into a covenant with God. The celebration goes from one God to a whole community that is now to be God's covenant people and a light to the rest of the world. Easter is about what happened to Jesus, one person. He was raised from the dead. Pentecost is now about the community. They must go forward now, all filled with the Holy Spirit, to tell the world about Jesus, from one to the many. No wonder then that Pentecost can best be described as a harvest festival.